gentrification purposes, sort of the center.
My family's been here for 3 generations. Our house is about 4 blocks right down there, and it was definitely the community that would have been affected and impacted if the stadium would have went up.
Downtown has been facing significant gentrification pressures starting in about 2002-2003.
It's primarily a Latino community, mostly low income, some moderate income folks.
And so people was concerned about that, you know, because they was, this was their livelihoods, you know, and people had, you know, been there for years, you know, and all of a sudden now that, you know, they want to build this football field, now everybody got to go.
The South Park area of downtown is the most gentrified part of downtown, had the most push out of low-income tenants, has the most upscale loft development. And so thinking about sticking a 60,000 square foot stadium, like sort of pinning it in this already dense sports and entertainment district, brought the concerns about push out, but also about traffic and air quality.
I don't remember having any information that they gave us in the neighborhood, because they should be able to do that, let everybody know that they're taking on this large project.
The goal, I think, eventually became, well, if the stadium is going to be built, making sure that community residents and low-income residents in the community that would be impacted the stadium are at the table, the decision-making table, so that they could have a say into how the process unfolded.
And when they rolled out the 10,000-page EIR, we knew that we had to do something about that. We had to get engaged.
And that's when we asked HIP to help us with a health impact assessment so that we could really help the community understand what were the broader impacts of this project.
When the Los Angeles CommunityAction Network heard about the proposed stadium, they were highly concerned about the proposal and the impacts that it would have with the populations that form their membership. They approached human impact partners to see if we could do a health impact assessment to really highlight the potential impacts such as gentrification and displacement, how employment would be impacted, public safety, and we thought it was a great idea for our project.
We don't generally work with sort of the traditional experts, right? Our organization is built around community expertise. Fundamentally, people in their own community know both the problems and the solutions. And so when we first started talking to HIP, it was very clear that they believed that as well.
Our goal was to create a residential committee that was representative of the impacted area where the development was going to happen. So we wanted to have low-income individuals, we wanted to have African Americans, Latino folks.
And we required actually that each person represent an organized base of people, right? So it wasn't just these random residents who were like, I think, what have you, right? They were working with a tenants organization, a bus riders organization, a day laborers organization.
I'll be quite honest, I was a little bit concerned. When it was my first experience with an HIA, I had never worked with human impact partners, but it went really, really well.
So we looked at current conditions in the community, and in particular, we looked at them for low-income populations, for communities of color, for people with disabilities, and others who may be affected by the stadium. What we found is that in an area that's already particularly hard hit, so experiencing worse health issues and higher poverty rates than elsewhere in the city, that the stadium would really exacerbate these problems. So there would be things like higher housing costs, people would be displaced, and we'd see social networks that essentially were lost.
I mean, I think that's another sort of lasting impact of the campaign is the deep partnership. They're really building a model that's engaging communities and not just engaging in a model, promoting a model that makes community voice important, that makes low-income community members and their health, right? Because health disparities aren't numbers on paper. It's the health issues that communities are facing ongoing in low-income communities and communities of color that HIP is dedicated to. So that partnership goes far beyond this HIA. That's about really changing the public health dynamic in the country.
When the campaign ended, one of the things that we had to talk about was really frame this campaign the way it should be framed, which is some of the most disenfranchised, marginalized communities in the city, poor, extremely low-income, black and brown folks, homeless folks, took on the biggest entertainment developer in the world and was able to come up with a deal that protected a lot of the interests. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we were able to, in a deal with AEG, say if the stadium were to be built, there'd have to be money set aside to build affordable housing. There'd have to be money set aside to build green space and public space for residents. There'd have to be processes put in place so that when law enforcement and private security guards come in the community, community residents would have a say in terms of how that went down, because what we see is a lot of those folks criminalizing the youth of the community. And so we framed it not only as a victory in terms of the stadium, but really to catalyze all of our organizing.
And when you got poor people, that's from Skid Row, the poorest in the nation, you know, to stand up and fight, you know, this big old giant, you know what I mean? It's a David and Goliath story.